real man doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. It's All-Star Weekend. We are heading into the closing stages of the season, but with all the brightest stars in the league heading towards Utah. They should be there already, ready to put on a show with the dunk contest, the 3-point contest. We're getting there. We should have a few fun highlights this weekend, and then a fun game as always. Can LeBron remain undefeated as the captain in the All-Star game? We shall see. But thinking about this, the stars, the superstars, we're going to have a little discussion on what's maybe the difference between a star and a superstar. And out of the guys going to the All-Star game, who's in the former, who's in the latter, we're going to discuss that. We're also going to be talking some of the underrated players that maybe should be in Utah in the All-Star game, or maybe they're just heroes for this team and they need a shout out. We're also going to be discussing the Nets. They've been pretty interesting so far in the short spell we've seen of their new look regime. And we're also going to talk a little bit on Russell Westbrook. Where could he end up? Can he be the difference maker for a contender team? We will get to that and more. But first of all, if you like what you guys are hearing, make sure to subscribe, comment. We are everywhere you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube, so drop us a like, drop us a comment. Let us know stuff you want to hear about. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. We will respond to everything. We're just looking for that love, and we'll keep producing the content. But let's get right into it. Chris, for you, what do you think the difference is between a star and a superstar in the NBA?
It's the guy who's going to get traded at the deadline versus the guy who's being obtained. It's the Kevin Durant versus whoever's getting traded for him. It's the guy who gets put in the rumors to be traded for a guy like Kevin Durant. I think that's clear every single year who's the difference in star versus superstar, because it's the guy that everybody in the league is trying to get. And I think it's tough when we talk about this, because for players, like, this doesn't really matter to them. Like, so this is such like a media and fan thing, but the semantics kind of matter in terms of like how, like, you know, how our view is on the league and how our view is on certain players. And I'm not sure if it's fair or not. So I'm curious what you think, because, for example, your boy Devin Booker, is he not a star when the Suns were losing? Was Steph Curry not a superstar when the Warriors were barely making the playoffs without his running mates? So, like, how much does team success matter in that aspect? I think there's a lot of things to it, but I think the trade deadline makes things a little bit clearer about who is a superstar versus who's a star.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that the way I was looking at it. I was kind of thinking it's kind of a star is someone that can do things that not everyone can do. And then a superstar is a guy that can do things that nobody else can do while having a consistent impact on winning. So, I mean, you look at Nikola Jokic. He has 21 triple-doubles this year. The Denver Nuggets are 21-0 when he has a triple-double. I mean, that's just what he does, but that's having such a huge impact on winning. So he is just clearly an absolute superstar. And then maybe you look at a guy like, I don't know, maybe say Julius Randle. He's putting up really solid numbers. He's clearly the guy in New York, but is he a superstar? Absolutely not. He's kind of right on the verge of being a star, or just kind of the best player in a not so great situation. That's kind of the verge that he's on there. So it's interesting when you can kind of say it. We're going to kind of go through each conference and the players that are in there, but you kind of think, in my head, I'm looking at, I think there's about 6, maybe at a most 8 superstars in the NBA currently, and the rest are almost there, not quite there, and some are they're stars. They're always going to be great. You'd always pay to watch them, but they're never going to be that difference maker to a title winning team.
Is there a third category? Is there a deserving like third category of star? I don't know if there's one floating out there already that like, I think there's such a clear distinction between a player like Julius Randle, who you mentioned, and then a guy like Donovan Mitchell, where I have a hard time necessarily putting a superstar tag on Donovan Mitchell. But then to say star, like, takes away so much of what he does consistently compared to a guy like Julius Randle, who is an all-star, but when you look at value, like, you're not going to call that guy a whatever label you're putting on him compared to a guy like Donovan Mitchell, compared to a guy like I don't know, even like Drew Holiday. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's a real one, but let's just get into it then. We'll start out in the East. All right, we'll start off with a really, really easy one. Giannis
Okay.
Antetokounmpo.
Okay. Like, not just superstar, but generational. Like, he's as close as you can get to LeBron at this point. He's a generational player.
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. And then what about Joel Embiid? I'm kind of like he's a sup. He's not quite the superstar because of what has happened in Philly, the injuries and stuff like that. He is my guy in my mind. I think of him as a superstar. But if someone kind of,
I was gonna say,
if someone kind of tried to fight me on it, I definitely listen.
But why? What would be the argument though? Like, what could anyone say that he's not a superstar? I'd say he's bordering on a generational type of big.
I think he is right there. I think the people would have the mark against him in winning. That'd be the main thing that they look at. I think in my head, he absolutely is a superstar. The things he can do on the floor, absolute scoring machine, the most dominant big man scorer probably currently in the NBA. Obviously, Jokic and Giannis are close behind him, but he's absolutely unbelievable for me. But I could definitely see there's being some out there that would try and question it.
Yeah, the winning thing, I'm not going to use that when we talk about like stars and superstars and things like that, because there's so many talented players. There's obviously like really inefficient, like low calorie scoring type of players. Guys like Devin Booker who get put in that range where their team doesn't win, but they're not considered good. But I think guys like Joel Embiid, you can throw Charles Barkley in there too, like Carmelo Anthony out there, guys who quote unquote didn't win. They didn't win a championship. And even though Barkley made it, didn't win, like, their talent is so obviously like above everybody else's. And I think Embiid too, like, when you talk about generational, you've seen his type of player a little bit in the old game, the way that he's able to just dominate in the post and no one can stop it, especially in a era like today, which is small ball, which is emphasizing 3-point shooting, which is emphasizing wing players and guards. Like, I think for the modern era, we've talked about how Jokic and Embiid have changed things in an interesting way, but he's like best player, one of the best players of this generation type of deal. Like, he's not just a star or superstar. I think in terms of talent, when you turn on television and you watch this guy play, like, that's not like, oh, that's one of the best NBA players like in the league. That's one of the best players I've seen in my life type of deal.
Yeah, for sure. Here's an interesting one now. Jason Tatum. I kind of look at Jason Tatum and I'd say he's on the verge, but I'd still say he's a star because I feel like he's still a guy who's thriving in a really good situation. That's how I would look at Jason Tatum.
Thriving in a really good situation. Now, this is the opposite, right? Now we're going to take away from players because they're in a really good situation, in a winning situation, as opposed to well, I got to say that we've had this conversation before about Celtics, and I think it's a compliment to both what Brad Stevens has done to build this team in a way that complements everybody, and that they can sustain success even when Tatum has an off night. But, I mean, Tatum's two-way play, his playmaking, his shooting, I mean, everything. It's all around game ever since he's been in the league, like, getting better every year. I mean, to this point, this season, I think he stamps himself as a superstar. Like, he's undoubtedly giving a good performance, even though he's not shooting well from three this year. I mean, he's doing a lot more, just putting the ball on the floor, making plays for others, really reading the defense well. And he does it night in, night out. Like, he doesn't have a lot of off nights, and he still can contribute defensively in a game-changing way. I think as a two-way player and the shot creator that he is, the amount of championship equity he has now, being in the championship last. I think he's proven that he's a winner, and I think it'll be even more clear after the season. We'll see what he does in the playoffs, and that's going to prove even more, even though he's not an outspoken guy, like that he does command a serious presence in this league.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a fair argument. Here's about it. Bam Adebayo, I'm kind of even hesitant to call him a star. I think he's a defensive star. You don't really think of him as a guy, even if you break it down as simply as you think a star is someone that people who watch the NBA would know, and a superstar is someone that everyone knows, even if they don't watch the NBA. And Bam Adebayo is kind of right in that mark of where you're kind of like, yeah, you know him when you watch it, but you're not like kind of hearing about him that consistently. He's a defensive stopper, a great defensive player, but a guy who, for me, has never done enough to. He's similar sort of spec to Julius Randle. He's kind of on the periphery of star level player.
Oh no! All right. This is the litmus test. Would you trade Julius Randle for Bam Adebayo straight up right now?
No.
Oh, get out of here! What are you talking about? Are you serious? Yes, you would. Yes, you would.
Why would
you would immediately trade for him. Are you crazy? All right, and plus, all right, the defensive star thing is tough because it's so much harder to put a number on that and to like qualify defense. That takes a lot more nuance and a lot more like watching game in and game out, and you don't see highlight reels. But is Draymond Green a star? In his height. So like when they're winning championships, is he a star?
Yeah,
he's a star. I mean, it's not just the defense. Obviously, for him, it's the playmaking too. Like we know that the Warriors are so dependent on his play, moving the ball, not just being a defender. But I think Bam does a lot of that too. Bam does a lot of. He's the amount of. It's not like he's just a Nick Claxton or I mean, even Rudy Gobert. I'm not going to make this a slight against Rudy Gobert, but Rudy Gobert's very, 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 very good at defending the rim, and he won those defensive player of the years because of it. But Bam, I think, does a little bit of everything at a really high level, and he has a playmaking, and I think he's still steadily improved around the block. He's not really added a whole lot of shooting, but I think the balance to his game, I'd still call him a star because of his impact on the game, like the way that he's able to impact both ends of the floor in different ways. They're not flashy ways, they're not star ways, and I think that's why it's tough to bring in like the name recognition factor, because by name recognition, Andrew Wiggins was an all-star starter last year. So I don't know how far that metric goes, but I can't believe you would say that. Julius Randle's having a nice little stretch here, but 9 out of 10 people would easily trade Bam for Julius Randle straight up.
Yeah, I totally get that, and don't get me wrong, I've been very critical of Julius Randle, but at the same time, like, our whole team is currently built around him. He's almost our everything, as good as Jalen Brunson has been. But
and how's that gone?
I mean, it's going okay this year. They're doing better than I thought they would be, in all honesty. But I don't know if Bam Adebayo will be ready to take on that much pressure to deliver on the offensive end. Maybe he would, and maybe it'd be fine, but that's why I wouldn't say it. So we'll say he's a star, but I'm not going to go right off the bat, I'm going to trade Julius Randle for Bam Adebayo. I'm not going to go straight in on that.
I didn't know the comparison would be Julius Randle or Bam Adebayo. Like that was out of left field. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe the Knicks have been doing well enough that I'm glad it's put back your rose-colored glasses.
All right, Donovan Mitchell. I think he's definitely a star, a guy that you think he on a certain night he could become a superstar, but for straight up you kind of look and say he's a star in this league.
That's so. At what point does he become a superstar? You tell me, because he's had, I feel like a transcendent season this year where he's become more engaged defensively too. And I think, I guess, to see it in a different context versus seeing him alongside Gobert, seeing him work in a different system, I think alongside Garland too, and for it to work out, like there's been no problems. I don't know. I feel like his production has taken him a big step closer.
Yeah, he's definitely getting closer, but he's still as good as he's been and as good as the Cavs have been, you still wouldn't be mentioning his name in terms of the MVP race, in terms of a guy that you think can come into your team and straight away make you a championship contender. Like, I mean, the Suns were kind of floundering a little bit this season with the injuries that they've had. As soon as they add Kevin Durant, everyone's like, okay, yeah, they're the favorites now, and justifiably so. With Donovan Mitchell, I don't think he's quite there yet. As good as he has been, and as good as he will continue to get over the next few years.
Yeah, 27 points a game. That's good for ninth in the league. 4 rebounds, 5 assists. Shooting almost 50% from the field, 39% from three. This is his best 3-point shooting year. I think he does this another year. We'll see what he does in the playoffs. That the playoffs are such a big thing in this, and that's again why it's tough, because like some players you want to give them the winning thing to like bump them up in their status, and then other players you don't want to use their lack of winning because of what the team situation is to detract from them. But I think it does definitely mean something. We've seen Donovan Mitchell step up in moments, and obviously that the Jazz kind of faltered those last couple of years, but he has a chance to, make a big name for himself here again. If the playoffs are going to be a huge proving grounds for players like him to take a step out of just being looked at as, an efficient scorer or just a guy who puts up points, a star, and being like a superstar level player. I think he's a guy that has it in him to make that step.
Yeah, I agree, and the situation he's now in Cleveland, it's so big for them because they've literally haven't been able to do anything without LeBron James being there. They've been nothing in the postseason. So Donovan Mitchell can come in, start putting those performances together in the postseason. That definitely helps his cause there. Easier one, Jaylen Brown, star. Not never going to be a superstar. Star. He's a star. DeRozan, star as well.
Yeah, that's. So for Brown, his what he does in the defensive end, what he's done with his shooting, that's made him clearly a star. The handles still aren't there. The playmaking, I don't think, will be there in the same way that I think DeRozan's defense has never been there. And the 3-point shooting is obviously, like, even though he's a master in the mid-range, like the 3-point shooting has not been there as well. And yeah, it's the defensive end of the floor for DeRozan that keeps him from that. And that's the kind of thing that like players like Tatum, players like, and we'll talk about a specific player later on that I think has an interesting case for jumping into a star level player. But players like DeRozan that just don't play that end of the floor, like it has to take away from how you look at them as a player. Even though they can put up points, it doesn't matter if they're giving it up on the other end.
Yeah, for sure. And then the final one of the East obviously lost a few of their all-stars at the trade deadline there. They're in the West now. But the final one of these, Tyrese Halliburton, star at the moment. He's a guy, if he's putting up these same sort of numbers this time next year and it's having a bigger impact on winning in Indiana, I'll definitely believe that he can become a superstar. But for now, he's still just on the verge of having become a star. It's where can he take it to from here?
Man, I wish you were going to talk about him because I would have looked this up and I will mention it in the next podcast. But how many 20 and 10 seasons do you get from a point guard in a decade? Like Chris Paul probably has done it several times.
I don't even know if he has. Yeah, I probably asked him 20 points that much.
Yeah, maybe not. Jokic is going to do it this year, I believe. But I think you could probably count on your one hand the amount of players that have pulled off a 20 and 10 season. Now he's 0.1 point shy of 20. So we're giving him the benefit of the doubt. He'll have a few good games, but that has to put him like that. He is as a young guy in the league. I already messed this up last part. At least this is his third year now, I believe. It's his third year.
Yeah.
Okay. But you have to look at him as a star just based on that alone. Like he has come into this team that has had nothing. We thought they're going to be rebuilding and it's completely reinvigorated them and given them a direction forward. and has changed their fate completely. Like he's become a transformative player for this team, and it's something that he's gonna have no name recognition around like people who don't pay attention to the NBA because the Pacers haven't done anything yet and they haven't won anything yet. But I mean, what he's doing right now as a playmaker, as a point guard, like it can't be understated at all.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Let's flip it over to the West. Start off easy again. Luka Doncic.
Superstar. Moving on.
Just
generational though. What about generational? Will he fall into the category of Giannis, of Jokic, of Embiid?
My heart says yes, but in my head, I'm kind of like, he's gonna have to be able to win, whether it's showing this year that he can coexist alongside Kyrie Irving for the future, and he can adjust to it not all being about him and giving up some of those moments for the betterment of the team. But in terms of talent level, in terms of a guy that goes out on the floor and just does things that you've very rarely seen before, that's what Luka Doncic is all about. So I think the winning will determine whether or not he's looked at as a generational talent, I think.
Yeah. I think it's the same thing like Embiid. Like you turn on the TV and you watch a guy play, and there's just something special about what he does. And I feel bad, like, because you see players like Tatum, like you've seen it in a guy like Tracy McGrady. You've seen wings who are uber talented scorers and very smart with the ball on the floor. And it's hard to make it just about like the eye test and just feeling like it's magic. But I mean, there's a reason why we call Luka magic. Like the things that he does on the floor, it's a pure entertainment. But I gotta say that probably just in terms of what they've done in the league so far, like I'd still put them on the same level. I think Tatum is underrated compared to Doncic, but it's just that special factor about what Doncic does offensively with his playmaking, the no-look passes, and just knowing where everyone is on the floor, throwing the ball behind his head, like it's something special. So generational, maybe not yet, but superstar, easy.
Yeah, 100%. And then another easy one, LeBron James. I think he's a superstar. We can move on from him.
He's done a couple cool things.
Kyrie Irving, I think we both know he's a star. He's the best second star for me. Probably one of the best. If he hadn't gone so crazy in Brooklyn, he would definitely still be this, to be honest with you, I think. But as a 2-star, as a second star on a competitive team, Kyrie is a guy that everyone would want to have.
Everyone? I don't know about everybody.
And in terms of basketball.
Okay. I'll be realistic with it though, that if you had a player that was out and only lasted on your team like an average of like 2 years and played like half of that time, is that a star? Part of being a star is being on the court and playing. And again, if I thought we were talking about Kyrie Irving in this exact regard, I would look at, but I guarantee you the percentage of games he's played in the past 5 years hovers maybe at like 60%. That's my educated guess. I'll confirm my fake news here next episode. But I think for a guy like that, is that a star? Or is that a reliable like night in, night out player?
Yeah, because all those games when he's on the floor, he still delivers. I get
when he's on the floor.
The point. When he's on the floor, he still delivers. Hopefully, now we're done with COVID. Hopefully he gets back to it, because as much as he misses games, it's not all about it. It's almost very rarely been due to injury. It's been due to other outrageous things. But I think anytime he's on the floor, he still does it. He's still able to do things that very few others can do. His handles, his finishing inside, his 3-point shooting. He's a 50-40-90 guy. He's a 27 point per game scorer. How can you say that's not a star?
Yeah, it's a star. It's a star. It's something. But moving on.
Yeah, moving on from that. An interesting one. Ja Morant.
Superstar.
Yeah.
Superstar.
I was leaning a little bit more towards star, but probably by this time next year, I'd have no way of saying he's not a superstar after what he's done. I think we've seen it maybe more this year. Maybe it's come down to some of the other injuries that the Grizzlies have had. But I think last year they were quite good without Ja Morant. And now this year, they've really struggled when he hasn't been on the floor. So he's kind of really taken the reins completely similar to like Luka in Dallas of this Grizzlies team. And he is the lead. Obviously, we always knew he was the main man, but the team was able to come together without him. Now they're relying on him that bit more. He's being willing to put the team on his back that little bit more. So he's right on the cusp there. But for me, he's still a star at this moment now. He's not quite made it to superstar.
27-8. And the eye test, I hate the eye test, but like we talked about, when you turn on the TV, you see a guy like Embiid, you see a guy like Ja, you see a guy like Doncic. That's the way that he alters the game with his athleticism around the rim. Like, who else does that? Like, who else has that talent? I think if the numbers weren't there, and it was just like he's slowly making his way there, he's not quite as productive, and it's just like you're seeing flashes of it. But dude, since day one, like he's been a absolute lights out performer, and he does it consistently, and he does it against the best. Like, he gets better when he plays the best competition. I feel like the thing that's holding him back is just making it far enough in the playoffs and seeing him enough in the playoffs and just having the face. And I think people want to take away from Ja right now because of what kind of the attitude that the Grizzlies have had. But I don't know. I feel like the presence that he has on the floor, like when Ja Morant steps on the basketball court, the other team has to change their entire game plan. Like, obviously their players are there that you have to scout for, you have to really change your game plan a lot for. But Ja Morant is one of those guys that has game breaking offensive skills. Like, what does on the court, you have to shift everything around to survive a game against him. And that's something that only superstars do. Like, I think that how consistently he does it and how good the Grizzlies have been because of it, I don't know, it's hard for me not to give him that title.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I think that is definitely a fair argument. I won't quite jump on it with you just yet, but I think you've definitely come as close as you can to convincing me. Larry Markkinen,
my boy. Let's see. Let's give it a year. He looks like February Larry Markkinen of 2018, 2019. That was a guy that I thought was going to be a bull for life. He's looking at like that right now, night in, night out. So I do have confidence that this is who he is. Like, he's reached his potential with this team, like you said, being confident in a new area. But I need to see it another year. Like, I think there's levels to it, and I think he's not quite there yet, just in terms of consistency. Like, new situation, grass is always greener. Maybe things get tough next season, and maybe this is situation dependent. I think the star is going to be productive wherever he goes. You throw Kyrie Irving on any team, and he's going to be productive because that's who he is. Can you say the same for Lowry? I think there's a resume that argues against it, but what he's done this year is star production. Absolutely. Like, there's no doubt about it. But I would want to see it consistently and see what he does moving forward with it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. And then another couple of easy ones. Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
I think he's a superstar. Just sort of.
Just maybe.
Steph Curry, maybe as well. Yeah,
best shooter ever. Best. We won't do best point guard ever thing. That's a
you
hot topic.
That, don't you?
That's a hot topic. That's for another day. That'll get the old heads mad.
De'Aaron Fox.
He's since Tyrese Halliburton left Sacramento, he's looked like a different player. This season looks like a much more complete player, especially alongside Sabonis. And the way the system has changed with Brown coaching the team, I think this is another one of those situations, maybe definitely ahead of Markkanen because he's had more success more long term than Markkanen, but he's a star. I have him actually on my list here of like a underrated player. So I don't think De'Aaron Fox is getting enough credit for what he's done this season. Because he's on the Sacramento Kings, but I think he's almost there. He's almost there. If I'm gonna sit here and call a guy like Zach LaVine a star, then I gotta stay consistent. And I think undoubtedly for how good the Kings have been this season, how efficient he's been as well. He's been one of the best players at the rim, and really the whole engine of the offense along Sabonis, which is arguably the best offenses in the league, top 3. That gives him a star title, and he's done this long enough where I think that this is just it's not all the system, but this is a better system that works around a star player as opposed to the system making him into a better player, like maybe we're seeing with Markkanen.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And this is next guy is a guy that I kind of struggled with on this one. Damian Lillard.
What? What's the struggle? What's the struggle?
Looking at it from the way I kind of describe a star or a superstar leading into the episode, that's where I'm struggling by not calling him a superstar. The way I said, someone that can do things that no one else can do with consistent winning impact. That's where I'm kind of like, is that exactly what is that Dame? Is Dame at that?
He has more 30-footers this year than the entire league. That's the tweet. Like he's the best deep shooter in the league. And that year, a couple years ago, when people are like, "Oh, is Dame like Steph?" Like comparing the two, and it was like Steph's first time, or Dame's first time, like reaching the pinnacle of his shooting. Like he's kept it there, and he's not the greatest shooter ever. That's Steph Curry, but he's entered the conversation as like one of the greatest shooters ever. Just what he's doing from long range, what he's doing off the dribble. And I think that you get a guy like that with what he's doing from deep, and that has to be a difference maker in terms of being a star versus a superstar. Like who else is doing that? And same thing like I said with John Morant, like you watch any Trailblazers game, the other team has to just bend their entire defense to what he does. Like no one is bringing out pressure 3 feet beyond the 3-point line on anybody except for Steph Curry and Dame. That's a superstar. That's the kind of talent that a superstar brings, where you have to completely alter your game plan around a guy like that.
Okay. I'll say you've convinced me. I think I'll put him in there. You've done it.
I got you on one.
Me there.
Maybe we'll work on the Julius Randle Bam Adebayo thing later, but at least I've convinced you of that.
That's good. And then Paul George.
Oh, poor Paul George. I'm glad we haven't had to have this conversation this season, because I feel like we have it every year where it's like, is he a superstar? Is he actually good? Playoff P. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have just become like these forgotten stars in the league because of the injuries and what has happened with the Clippers ever since they made that insane move. I can just see Steve Ballmer in my head just going crazy at the press conference when he has Kawhi Leonard and Paul George next to them. But it's quiet. There's not enough to discuss. I mean, they're playing really well beginning of this season. They're 10-4 now in 2023. They're 23-24 before that. Obviously, he's a star, and he's been a superstar in moments throughout his career. I mean, just point to what he did in a Pacers uniform, how he performed in the Thunder. Like he's having a Kevin Durant level year. He's having Kevin Durant MVP level year when he was on the Thunder with Russ. So he's had moments of being a superstar. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think he's just in the point of his career now, him and Kawhi, where, they're on the wrong side of 30. and the injuries have held them back, and trying to maintain that has held them back, and not having their name in the playoffs, not being, an obvious top 3 team in the West has kind of kept their name out of these conversations. But they're not just star players, like they're tenured star players, and I don't know what else to do with that. Someone could call me crazy and point out something else, but they don't give the feeling because of the consistency, and that's just not there.
Yeah. No, I think you're right there. And then a couple, actually one more, Zion Williamson. I think he will become a superstar, but from what we've seen at the moment, he's still at that. He's still got to say he's not quite superstar yet.
Oh man, you need to see the health. The hamstring thing, like, that's bothersome. For him to re-aggravate it, now he's going to be out until after the All-Star break. He is a superstar player. Like, he's a guy, again, like, he does something on the court by himself that, breaks the other team. What he does on the inside. But, if I'm going to make this argument about Kyrie, just about availability, I mean, that matters for Zion too. Like, are you a superstar if you're only doing it for half the season? Because the other half you're hurt. Maybe not. Like, when he is on the court, like, he looks like a superstar. But unfortunately, it's gonna be the conversation for a while.
That's the issue, and I also gotta see some playoff Zion. Have yet to really see that. I not that saying that he has to go right now and win. I just want to see him going face to face with another top level talent in the league, another top level team in the league, and let's see what he can deliver. He's still at that star moment. Undoubtedly has superstar potential. The things that he can do, his athleticism is off the chart. He could be that guy, but for now, I think it's still potential. And the final two, obviously, I left out a couple of guys that I think we know the answer to, but final two are both interesting one. First of all, Anthony Edwards. I think he is a star, but you talk to me again a year from now, I think we could be looking at him as a guy who's in superstar, right up there in terms of similar to like what we talked about with Ja Morant. I mean, he's been the most consistent guy, one of them in the league, because he's been out there on the floor for every single Minnesota Timberwolves game this year, as much as they've struggled. Only guy in the league with 1,000 points and 100 steals. He's top 10 in points, steals, field goals, threes, 25-point games. He is a star level player. He's still only 21 years old. He is going to be a superstar, but for now, he's still a star. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, I think, man, he's still the most frustrating player in the league. The most frustrating player in the league, because
young guys are. That's what young guys are.
I know. I think it's tough to compare him and Ja, because I think Ja has the IQ. Like, Ja knows what to do and when to do it, how to get other people involved, like managing the flow of a game, and that's why he's point guard. Halliburton's coming for that title potentially, but Anthony Edwards still needs to get that sense. But some players grow incrementally. Some players like add things to the game every year, but other players, like, there's just a moment when it clicks. Like, there's a playoff series that they lose and they realize, and it was like this emotional blow that makes them realize that they can't do it themselves, or that they really need to play a different way. And there needs to be that focal moment for Anthony Edwards for a next year thing to happen. Maybe they make it to the playoffs and there's just this falling out, and there's this big learning moment, and then next season he comes back a completely different player. Or maybe it's year by year. If it's year by year, I think he's still a couple years away, just because the maturity to see him engaged night in, night out, the IQ to see him make the right play every single time down the floor. Not every single time, but consistently trying to make the right play. It's just not something we've seen yet. But dude, once he puts that together, like, the reason he's the most frustrating player in the league is that I honestly don't see anyone else in the league who has the same full package that Anthony Edwards has from the wing position. He has I think he's the most athletic wing in the league. For a guy who has not the best shooting mechanics, he's one of the most aggressive 3-point shooters in the league. He's already chasing Steph Curry level records as a young shooter. And putting the ball on the floor, it's gotten better every single year. And defensively, dude, like that possession with him and Jalen McDaniels against Doncic and Kyrie Irving down the end of the stretch of the game, like that is something that he can do when he's engaged. He is a legitimate stopper, a wing stopper. And with the steal, like he can be aggressive in the passing lanes. Like if he can put the full picture together, that's an MVP. Like that's in every single year. And we haven't seen I think a guard be consistently like in the MVP conversation, except for Steph Curry, but like a physical wing type of play, like his type of prototype. And his prototype is what? Michael Jordan. Like that's the kind of physical prototype that he brings and what he does as an athlete. And we haven't seen a guy like that in a while be in the MVP conversation every year. And I think that's the kind of player he can be. So there's a long-winded way of saying he's not a superstar yet, and he's kind of bordering on a star. Just I think just the consistency level with him. But dude, once he puts it together, I think it's so like just you drool over the idea of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think absolutely right there. And then another guy that's in that sort of similar mold, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's put it together, man.
It's kind of crazy to think that he isn't an all-star starter. Like what more do you have to do? It just shows the level of talent in this league and that how much you have to do to get into the heads of all the fans around the world that are voting on these things. I mean, Shai has just been unbelievable this year, averaging over 30 points a game. He's got 1,494 points without threes this year. Most in the league, more than Giannis, more than Embiid. The dude is an animal inside. He is, in terms of this year, like, how often did the Thunder win without him being the lead guy, without him having one of those unbelievable nights? And he's doing it with every fiber of his being. It's obviously not having the huge impact on winning that you'd like to see when you see a guy kind of break out like we saw with Ja last season. But when this team is at their full complement, and if Shai can build on this and continue this now over a 3-4 year spell, it's kind of frightening to think of what level that he could get to.
Yeah, and he's a guy that it's definitely a media thing. It's a market thing. Why his name isn't a household name right now, isn't emerging as one. And I think it's also his play. Like I think he's not going to get the same level of attention Donovan Mitchell does when Donovan Mitchell's throwing like a baseball sidearm pass, or Donovan Mitchell's like throwing down a dunk at 6'1". Shai is a more methodical player. He's crafty the way he scores, and he's not throwing down crazy dunks or anything. But and for guards averaging 30, 4, 4, 1 and 1, I think someone's already put this out there. This is back in December, but so everyone should know this already. And if you don't, this is incredible. So that stat line is just to say the all-around play, the scoring, and the efficiency at 50%. Only other player to do that is Michael Jordan 2 times, putting up those box stats on both ends of the floor at that efficiency. And both those times, Michael Jordan won MVP. I mean, that's the kind of year that Shai is having. And for the Thunder to, we're not going to get into trade deadline stuff, but I think that, once the Thunder like make some noise in the playoffs, which we'll see if they do this year, it's going to be so tight at the end of the season. We'll see what happens, but he's not going to get that tag. But is that a superstar player?
Right, he's right. He's right there at it. It's just a question of, this is the first year we've seen it, so you can't really just automatically go right off the bat, yeah, this guy is a superstar. I can't do that, but I think soon, I think when we start to see when we see him playing alongside Chet next year, he's still playing at this same great level. I think we will really start to look at him as a guy who is superstar caliber 100%.
Yeah. All right, let's do a test here. Ready? First question is, do you think this is sustainable? Like, is this just some fluke, or is this Shai? Like,
the fact that it's inside scoring, the 2-point domination, that's why I think it is sustainable. Maybe not 30 points per game every year, but somewhere in the region of 25 to 30 a year, no problem.
Yeah, and I would say also he doesn't have like a running mate that is like forcing doubles, or like he doesn't have a ton of elite shooters that's spacing the floor like crazy. Like he's doing this against set defenses that know that he's the main threat. So I think the answer to that is like this is Shea. Like he's proven like this is the kind of player that he is. And I think that's at a Ja Morant level. But let's do this test. Easy one that I hope you'll pass. Would you trade Julius Randle straight up for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, would you trade um, Zach LaVine for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
Yeah.
I'll answer that yes, because that's my guy. Would you trade Jaylen Brown for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
Yes, on the face of it, but I also would think about it just because I really think the fit of
No,
Tatum and
not
Brown
fit,
and
not fit. Just like in a vacuum, like you're just two players, irregardless. Just like the
yeah, in a
talent.
vacuum, yeah.
Okay. All right. Here's a hard one. Devin Booker for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
I'm gonna say
Not you can't you
yes.
can't yeah yes. I think that's the level of player he is. Like you just do that test. Who across the league that you consider to be an established star, and based on like our understanding that this is probably who Shea is, would you trade them straight up? And I think that's a pretty good indicator of the fact that Shea is, he's a top 20 player, he's a top 15 player. We'll like this. Then it just gets into the semantics of like how much playoff success we had, and he hasn't had the opportunity to do that yet. But once he does, then that's a whole different conversation. But objectively, he's a better player than Donovan Mitchell right now. He's a better player than Devin Booker objectively right now. A better player than Jaylen Brown. Just name any guard, and I think he's right there.
Yeah. No, I
That's
think you're
almost a
absolutely right.
superstar.
Yeah, he's right. He's right almost there. It's just a question of waiting and seeing it just that little bit more, even to the end of this season. Then you're even thinking about it at that age as well. And if they manage to edge into the playoffs this year too, that's going to definitely be really fun to watch. And moving on then from the stars and superstars, let's talk about a couple of the underrated guys, possibly guys that haven't had enough of a shout out this year, or guys that aren't there at all. I'm going to lead off the bat and give some love to my boy in New York, Jalen Brunson.
Okay.
24, averaging 24 points, 6 assists on 51, 41, 84 splits. He's having a real great impact with this New York team. As much as it's still built around Julius Randle, and he's the guy they're going to for the most part on the offensive end, Brunson is still performing at this career level, and he's doing it in New York as well, where no one likes to show off their career levels too much in New York. So it's really great to see.
Yeah, I love that pick because that's I don't think the Knicks get a lot of love in general, and I think they're still going through a growing period. And Jalen Brunson's just been fantastic. This is probably the best case of nepotism you could see. Is that nepotism or is that cronyism? I don't know. There's a certain word for it where you're just giving jobs to your friends. I think it's cronyism. I don't know. I gotta check my vocab here, but he's been fantastic. He's been a perfect fit out there. How do you feel about the fit with him and Josh Hart? That's fun, right?
Yeah.
It's been real. Josh Hart's been really fun.
Yeah.
Maybe Josh Hart will be on our underrated list next year. But I gotta throw Jimmy Butler. Not there in Utah this weekend, which is insane to me. He's a guy that should be in the All-Star game every single year, and he's ninth in PER. And I mean that's a pretty objective measure of like the level of talent. Like he's always in the top 10 in player efficiency rating. And I don't think that's very noisy. It's what he does on the floor night in, night out on both ends of the floor. And it's just very simply put, like he is a top 12 player every single season. And he doesn't get that same love because he does the dirty work. Like he's not the flashy guy. Like I said, he's not that Donovan Mitchell throwing down dunks. He's not making a lot of noise in the media. Like he is probably one of the most underrated stars in the league, I feel like.
Yeah. I think everyone knows that already about Jimmy Butler. I think everyone appreciates how good he is and how underrated he is. As much as he isn't quite the difference maker, he's only led that Miami team. He led them to one finals appearance. He led them to the Eastern Conference Finals, of course, last year. But he is that dude. Like, he can, on any given night, he can just go off. And throughout the course of a season, all the things that he does on the floor, the impact that he has on winning, he is that guy. He's not the flashy. He's not going to average 30 points a game. He's not going to be dishing out 10 assists a game. But at the same time, on any given night, he could have a 30-point triple-double if he really wanted to. He's going to do it on both ends of the court, and he's going to lead teams to winning records, and that's star level player.
Yeah, that's what he does, and he does it. He doesn't get the shine for it, and I think that's an indictment on the Miami Heat not being as dominant as they would like to be this season. Not an indictment on Jimmy Butler, but I think we already mentioned De'Aaron Fox. He was on my list for being underrated. I think Pascal Siakam, I mean, has been. I wanted to say underrated, but then when you look at the fact that he made it to the All-Star game, rated. He's rated.
Yeah.
He got there, and Jimmy Butler did not. So I think Siakam's got the love that he deserves, especially like his name being put out there. Like, maybe he's going to partner with Kevin Durant and the Nets. Like, he would be the guy to help them win something. But maybe he's adequately rated at this point if he's making the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think he's yes and no. On the one hand, you're like he's probably well rated because he's getting into the All-Star game. He's being recognized, but at the same time, he's averaging 25, 8, and 6. He's really looked impressive in a Toronto Raptors team that's obviously underwhelmed this year. But the things that he's able to do on the floor at his size, the growth we continue to see in his game, he definitely still needs that an extra bit of love, an extra bit of notice, an extra bit of respect put on his name.
Yeah. We talked about Shea. That was my most underrated guy, because I think we had a good conversation on that, like thinking about where he stands in the league. But
yeah,
you ready to talk?
He's a big one.
Yeah. Since we're running out of time here, we ready to talk some Nets? We talk about Westbrook some other time. We have to talk about Nets. Really
yeah, we got to talk. We'll talk Brooklyn Nets. We'll see what happens. What happens with Russell Westbrook. The Nets. We've only seen 4 games of the new look team. They're 2-2 in those games, and that was including that really tough L to Philadelphia. It could have easily been a 3-1 record to start off after trading their two stars. But looking at it objectively, obviously it looks as though they could be on this kind of similar path the rest of the year, maybe a slightly above 500 from here until the end of the season, which means they will be in the playoffs, which is a big thing after trading away your 2-star players. But the big thing I'm seeing out of it, maybe it's time to look at this now being Bridges' chance to really be a star 2-way player and the lead guy on a team. I mean, you challenged him at the start of the year to do more offensively. Obviously, you didn't know he was going to get traded to Brooklyn for Kevin Durant, but we saw that 45-point, that career night he had just the other day. He's already taking more shots. He's already getting to the free throw line more. Obviously, very, very small sample size, but in that time as well, Ben Simmons is averaging 4 and 3. I mean, like he's taking like 3.5 shots a game. When we first heard this trade going down, we were kind of thinking of, can Ben Simmons now get back without the pressure? Maybe it's more time to think, can this be Mikal Bridges' team, and can he show that he can be a 2-way player? Maybe similar to what we saw from Jimmy Butler, what we see from Jimmy Butler, maybe without the passing ability.
Yeah, and the passing ability hasn't been bad. Like, you see him make a couple skip passes throughout these last few games when the defense is loading up on it. Like, when's the last time we saw a defense loading up on Mikal Bridges like that? He made the smart pass on that, and I think not just the playmaking ability, but the mid-range shooting. The mid-range shooting has been the thing that's like jumping off the page. We've seen that he's gotten more attempts than ever in 2023 with the moments that Devin Booker's been out, when he's been playing out there without him on the floor, or Chris Paul. Like, he's been a lot more aggressive, being a pick and roll ball handler, and shooting pull-up mid-rangers. He's taken 45% of his shots in 2023 from there, and he only shot 18% of his shots in his rookie year from mid-range. It's steadily gotten better at that, and he looks comfortable with it too. And if he's not going to be dropping 40 points a night, not at all, but averaging 20 points a game, almost 20 points a game this season, being an efficient shooter, being the defensive stopper that he is, like a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate every single year. That's the really interesting thing for me, because a guy like that, when you really look at the whole package, you have a guy who's a legitimate wing stopper, can defend 1 through 4, and is a great off-ball player. He's an amazing cutter, very smart cutter, knows how to make the extra pass, knows how to attack closeouts, knows how to spot up from 3, get to the right spots. Like he's a complete off-ball player. If that is a guy who also is showing that he can do enough on the ball to be a secondary playmaker, to be a shot creator, that's like, what does that turn him into? That's a Paul George level player. That's a prime Paul George level player, a guy who's able to do both those things at the same time. And I think Bridges just will have to learn the balance of that. But now he's exploring, having the team to himself like this, which he's never had the opportunity to do before. And this is an amazing thing where, kind of like where you give Lauri Markkanen, you give him the ability to do a lot more on this Utah Jazz team. There's no pressure. Let him play free and like really explore his full abilities. If you're doing that with Mikal Bridges, and like this, he looks very, very comfortable having the ball in his hands, attacking the nail and kicking it out, or taking a shot, taking fadeaway. Like with his length on these mid-range shots, on these fadeaways, like he looks very comfortable scoring whenever he wants in those mid-range situations. And this is just the beginning. This could just be the biggest fluke ever, and maybe they should have taken 4 first-round picks from him. But if this is a 25 point per game scorer who's going to be an absolute ball stopper on the other end, that's a really good player. That's a player you don't find in the NBA every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And what else have you seen out of Brooklyn? What else have you liked from the early viewing?
I think the number one thing is the energy. We talked about this like when the trade went down, is that like the Nets can finally like develop a team identity, and the energy on this team feels really good. Like the way that these guys are playing on the court, the way that they're moving the ball, the way that they're playing unselfishly. The defense hasn't come through yet, but I absolutely believe it will. You'd be surprised to know that in those 4 games, they were 25th in the league in defensive rating. But I think that the talent defensively is definitely there. But we've seen that they can be a team that moves the ball seamlessly, that can space the floor for legitimate shooters out there. Nick Claxton in the dunker spot, Spencer Dinwiddie, an aggressive shooter, Cam, also an aggressive shooter, and then Cam Johnson. I was talking about Cam Thomas. Now we got 2 Cams to worry about here, but Cam Johnson, a guy alongside Joe Harris, Seth Curry, real shooters out there. They've shown that they can space the floor and move the ball efficiently, and that's a team that's going to be successful down the long stretch. And if they continue to embody like this fluid ball movement and get better on the defensive end, like they're going to continue to be good.
Is this a team you see the Nets sticking with for next season, or do you think they'll try to be aggressive in the off season and possibly make a move for someone maybe a more obvious candidate to build the next team around?
I mean, if I had to read Joe Tsai's mind, if I had to read Jacques Vaughn's mind, I think this is probably going to be the happiest that they've been in years. Like they get to coach, or Jacques Vaughn gets to coach a team of guys with no ego, guys who just want to play basketball, and guys who have a lot to learn, maybe not learn, but to develop. Like he can develop Mikal Bridges into a star. That's pretty enticing for a coach. That's pretty enticing for a team that made a trade for Kevin Durant. That's a pretty nice thing to go off of if you're the general manager and you made a trade in a tough situation and got guys that developed into stars. That's a pretty big thing. I don't think that they're really that they're going to be jumping at the bit to get another star, to get into another situation where they have to, jettison young players who they think they have promise and fit the character of the team. I think they're going to care a lot about that locker room. They're going to care a lot about, the identity that they're developing here.
Yeah. I hope that's how they go. But this is Brooklyn we're talking about. They like to jump the gun just a little bit sometimes.
They might have learned their lesson. They might have learned their lesson.
We hope, and Nets fans, I think you should hope for that too. You want to have a little bit of discussion on Russ? You want to finish?
I think we got time. I think we got time for it. Let's make it quick. So there's 3 teams: Bulls, Heat, Clippers. Those are the 3 teams that are being remembered the most. There's some other teams that seem to be interested. I saw Phoenix put out there. I don't know what that's about. That would be the most hilarious Westbrook and Durant reunion that we've seen. But I think for the Heat, I don't love it. Do you love that fit?
I'm not 100% convinced on it, but at the same time, thinking the way that Lowry has really dropped off this year, having a guy like Russ to come off the bench wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But yeah, fit wise, I'm not all in on that now.
Yeah, I think it's a similar reason to the fit in LA, where you got Butler, you got Adebayo, your 2 best players. You want to close with your best players. You're going to start with your best players, and those guys just don't operate in ways that complement each other. And I think that's that. I mean, I think a guy like Gabe Vincent, not saying that Gabe Vincent is a guy, but a tertiary playmaker at the point guard position, who's a great off-ball shooter, really moves without the ball. That's the kind of guy that you surround Jimmy Butler with, and that's successful. That's not Russ. Russ, I think, would really implode the spacing that they already struggle with. So I think it's a pretty quick answer for me. The Bulls. So this is a complicated situation because you have Billy Donovan, who coached Russell Westbrook, and I think the great thing about bringing Billy Donovan in is that he's a coach that will allow players to play freely and seeks to really put them in the best position. He's not a kind of guy that's going to come in and just impose a system on players, which is great, right? Especially for young guys who are trying to figure out their place in the league. But for Russell Westbrook, I think the biggest complaint people ever had was that Donovan Mitchell did not rein him in. Or Donovan Mitchell, Billy Donovan. Donovan Mitchell definitely reined them in. Absolutely reined them in. He had a lot of success doing that, but Billy Donovan did not. Billy Donovan couldn't control just everything that Russell Westbrook did, and I don't think anyone can. That's the beauty and the beast. I don't know why I wanted to say that. It sounds right. The beauty and the beast of.
It kind of works there, yeah.
It works. I like it, but that's what makes him so fun and so frustrating as a player. But for him to come to the Bulls, I think would be such a feast of misery and fun. I would love it. I'm at the point now where I don't care. I'm done. I'm done caring about the success of the Bulls this season because it's not happening. So if you want to tank without having to trade anybody, just sign Russell Westbrook and I'm not going to say that Russell Westbrook is going to reason that we lose, because that's not fair to him necessarily, but he will give us a better chance at losing in style. I would love to tank in style with Russell Westbrook.
That is fair. I have to assume that if Russ has his choice, I have to assume that he won't go to a team like the Bulls. He'd rather go and join a team that are at least going to be in the playoffs, if not a contender. And that's when I feel like that's what his mentality will be. I don't see why he would go to a team like Chicago. I think I don't think wherever he goes, he's going to be there long term. So why wouldn't you go for the short term, potentially get that ring or something like that? I think that.
I don't think he cares about that. I don't think he cares about that. He's not that's never been his. Maybe that's an internal thought of his, but he's never externally talked extensively about, the accolades and winning a championship, stuff like that. I mean, you have this infamous clip this season about them in the locker room where LeBron and Darvin Ham are like encouraging him to keep going and like keep winning and make winning plays. He's like, yeah, everyone just have fun. And I think that for a guy like him who just desires to play free, like he's going to want to go to a situation where he can play free and not be like have the pressure to be on a team where he has to be somebody else. I mean, I think that's a sad thing about Russell Westbrook. I want to remember Russell Westbrook for the years with Kevin Durant, the years as an MVP,
30-point
the
triple double season. Like
oh my God, like that is the player that like was one of the most exciting players in the league. And then you send him to play with James Harden and he can't be Russell Westbrook because he plays with James Harden. And then you send him to the Wizards, misery, and there's nothing you can really do there. And he still has an excellent season and no one cares. And then now he gets to LA and that just was never a situation that was going to work out. So I think he's just had like the shit end of the stick in terms of being in situations for the player that he is. Like he is Russell Westbrook. Like you weren't going to bring in a guy who's just going to all of a sudden be an off-ball shooter and work with it, blah, 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 blah. Like he belongs in a place where he can play fun basketball, be an entertainer and play free. And that's not being a bench player for the Phoenix Suns playing 18 minutes a night just to be a spark plug. Like I want to see Russell Westbrook play 33 minutes a night and have the ball like 30% of the time when he's on the floor. Like that's the guy he is, and he'll still be a fun player like that.
So yeah, if that's your thinking, then why wouldn't he just stay in Utah?
Because that is the place of infamy where he's had the most like player fan interactions ever. I mean, it'd be hilarious. Like those guys who sit courtside that he got in fights with, like, are they going to be there? Are they going to be Russell Westbrook fans now?
I mean, you think about that though, but like the only reason he would want to, in my head, obviously, I get the point that you're bringing on about not really thinking about too much about winning that ring or getting onto that competitor, but at the same time, if he's not going to look to make that move, then I think why not just stay in Utah and then you're a free agent in this season, then maybe see where that takes you. I feel like he's going to end up with the Clippers. The Clippers have the team being most touted.
Yeah.
Apparently Paul George is onto him, trying to recruit him out to LA. Apparently LA have already begun talks with him. So you think that they're going to try and work that situation there. Maybe he gets more of an opportunity to be Russell Westbrook with the Clippers team. It's hard to see. You kind of have it on two sides of the coin. One side, you're kind of like, maybe it'll be quite similar to what we saw in LA. Westbrook just isn't the guy that can make that difference to a competitor. Or maybe he'll be able to flourish, and maybe the fact that Paul George and Kawhi could maybe just spread that floor just a little bit more, maybe he'll get more of an opportunity to be Russell Westbrook with the Clippers.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks there. And I think just talking about positives, because anyone will talk about the negatives of what Russell Westbrook will bring to that team. The positive is that on this Clippers team, you can make a pretty good argument that Mason Plumlee right now is their third best passer. And that is pretty indicative of like what their playmaking situation is. And they need a guy who can like consistently create for the team. And Russell Westbrook, I think, can still do that. And that just comes with all the bads. But you have Tyronn Lue, you have Paul George, you have Kawhi Leonard, you have two wing players that can play, that can space the floor and play in different ways. They're very versatile in ways that, LeBron James and AD aren't. So maybe this is a situation that does work. And I mean, how absolutely poetic would it be for there to be an LA matchup in the playoffs and for the Clippers and Russell Westbrook to come out on top? I mean, that would be like the most ironic way for this story to come out, and probably the craziest story that I've ever seen. But for a guy like that to be just absolutely flamed for who he is as a player, on this team for him to get all the blame for how the Lakers were constructed, even though this is Pelinka's fault, not Russell Westbrook's fault, and for him to come out on top. I'd love to see that. I mean, that's why I'd love to see him for the Clippers. And if that's the outcome, that I don't think this story could have possibly ended better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Let's the Lakers still have to reach the playoffs for that to happen. But maybe that's
we're assuming that already.
Has there been
the
written.
script?
The script has now been written. Let's see if that happens. But I think that's gonna do it for today's episode. A long one. Thanks so much for sticking with us, and everybody enjoy All-Star Weekend. My thanks to Chris for joining me. Everybody, remember, check out our show on all social media channels. We are everywhere at Coast to Coast NBA. And remember, take every shot and love every moment.
Peace.